Imagine a place so isolated that your screams would only be swallowed by the cold Bavarian wind. This is the story of Hinterkaifeck, a small, lonely farmstead hidden in the woods of Germany. It is 1922. The snow is thick, the air is biting, and something is deeply wrong. For the Gruber family, the horror didn't start with a scream. It started with silence and footsteps. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are going deep into one of the most disturbing unsolved mysteries in history. A case where the killer didn't just strike and run. He moved in, he stayed, and he watched. The Hinterkaifeck farm was home to 6 people. Andreas Gruber, his wife Casilia, their widowed daughter Victoria, her 2 children, 7-year-old Casilia and 2-year-old Joseph, and their new maid, Maria. But the shadow of death had been looming over this house long before the first drop of blood was spilled. 6 months earlier, the previous maid had quit in a state of pure terror. She claimed the house was haunted. She heard voices in the attic. She felt eyes on her every time she turned her back. The family laughed at her. They called her crazy. They didn't know she was the lucky one. By March 1922, the patriarch, Andreas, began to notice things he couldn't explain. He found a newspaper on his porch that he never subscribed to. He found scratches on the lock of the toolshed, as if someone had tried to pick it. And then there were the footsteps. In the fresh morning snow, Andreas saw a trail of footprints leading from the dark forest directly to the back door of his house. He followed them, expecting to see them lead away. But they didn't. They only went one way. Into his home, Andreas searched the barn. He searched the house. He found nothing. But that night, as the family slept, the floorboards in the attic began to creak. Slow, deliberate steps right above their heads. Most people would have called the police. But the Grubers were isolated, not just physically, but socially. They were not liked in the village. There were dark rumors about the family, whispers of incest between Andreas and his daughter, Victoria. They were a family of secrets, and perhaps they thought they could handle one more. March 31st, 1922. The day the world ended for the Grubers. It was a Friday, a cold, miserable evening. It is believed that one by one, the family members were lured out to the barn. We don't know how. Maybe a noise. Maybe the cattle were acting strange. Victoria went first, then her mother, then old Andreas, and finally the young girl, Casilia. Inside that barn, in the pitch blackness, someone was waiting. Armed with a Roitho heavy, sharpened pickaxe, the killer struck with surgical precision. One by one, they were bludgeoned. Their bodies were stacked on top of each other and covered with hay. But the nightmare was only halfway through. The killer then walked into the house. He walked past the kitchen, into the bedroom, where 2-year-old Joseph was sleeping in his cot. The pickaxe fell again. Finally, he went to the maid's room. Maria had only arrived at the farm a few hours earlier. She hadn't even unpacked her bags before the darkness claimed her. But here is where the story shifts from a massacre to something much more sinister. The family was dead, but the farm did not go quiet. For the next 4 days, neighbors saw smoke rising from the chimney. They saw the cattle being fed. They saw light moving in the windows at night. Someone was living in the house with the corpses. The killer ate their food. He slept in their beds. He looked at their family photos while their blood was still wet on the barn floor. On April 4th, the townspeople finally grew suspicious. Young Kazelia hadn't shown up for school. The mail was piling up. A group of men went to the farm to investigate. What they found would haunt them for the rest of their lives. In the barn, under a pile of blood-soaked straw, they found a stack of bodies. The autopsy revealed a detail that is hard to even speak about. 7-year-old Kazelia did not die instantly. As she lay there on the cold ground, trapped under the bodies of her mother and grandparents, she had survived 4 hours in the dark. In her terror and pain, she had pulled out tufts of her own hair. The investigation was a disaster. The police questioned over 100 suspects. They looked at the neighbor, Lorenz Schlittenbauer, who had a complicated relationship with Victoria. They even entertained the theory that Victoria's husband, who was reported killed in World War I, had actually survived and returned to find his family in a state of sin. But no one was ever charged. Years later, the farm was demolished. As the workers tore down the walls, they found the murder weapon hidden in the attic, right above the spot where Andreas had heard the footsteps. They also found evidence that someone had been living in the crawlspace for a long time. Small holes had been drilled through the floorboards, allowing the intruder to watch the family in every room. Every meal they ate, every argument they had, every secret they shared. He was watching. The Hinterkaifeck murders remain unsolved. The skulls of the victims were sent to Munich for psychic analysis, but they were lost during the war. Today, only a small monument stands where the farm once was. The ground is quiet now, but many locals refuse to walk near that spot after dark. They say the air still feels heavy. They say if you stand very still, you can still hear the sound of a sharpened blade hitting the barn floor. The most terrifying thought isn't that a monster killed a family. It's that the monster was already a member of the household long before he picked up the axe. He was the shadow in the corner, the creak in the attic, the eyes in the wall. Tonight, before you go to sleep, check your locks, look under the bed. And if you hear a sound in your attic, don't assume it's just the wind, because in Hinterkaifeck, they thought it was the wind, too. And they were wrong. Stay safe. And Don't forget to look behind you.